Welcome to the November 10th meeting of the Placer County Planning Commission. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Kathy, roll call.
Mr. Acre? Mr. Seveson's absent. Mr. Gray? Present. Mr. Moss? Here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Nader?
Here.
Mr. Rakucci?
Here. Thank you. Next is item report from the Planning Director. Good morning.
They have filled that position with Mr. Steve Pedretti, who is here in the audience today. Steve started last week, so he jumped into a busy time for us, but he has quickly rolled up his sleeves and got to work. So with that, maybe I'll have Steve come up, just give a little bit of his background and make the introduction. Thank you.
Good morning. Steve Pedretti, now the Community Development Resource Agency Director. Started last week. It's a very busy time. You're probably not going to see a lot of me. I'll show up for some of the bigger items. Most of the time I'll leave it to staff to deal with the Planning Commission. Just by way of background, I'm a civil engineer by training, actually a water engineer, and worked for the Bureau of Reclamation right out of college by Hoover Dam, and worked with Bureau for about 7.5 years on some of the big projects there. Came back to Sacramento. I grew up in Sacramento, moved back home, and started working for Sacramento County. Was there for 25 years, worked with a lot of development issues, starting with a water resources drainage perspective and also water. Eventually became the county engineer and spent 8 years as a county engineer, 4 years as the deputy administrator over the Municipal Services Agency, which is all the city type services, about 2,600 people in 10 different departments. So I was the number 2 person in that agency. The last 2.5 years, I was at El Dorado County, heading their community development agency, and now I'm here. So I'm very excited. There's a lot going on, and I look forward to working with all of you. Dan?
Well, welcome aboard. Pedretti, is that an Italian name?
Yes, my grandparents moved here from Italy.
Yeah, my parent came. Well, that's a good sign. The only thing that I didn't like about your presentation is that I'm an electrical engineer and you're a civil engineer. But other than that, I won't hold that against you.
I appreciate that difference.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I think we're in pretty good hands. So
okay,
we're pretty
sounds
happy
like
about that.
Sure.
So let's see, what do I want to cover today? So upcoming meetings, our board's meeting next Tuesday up in Tahoe. They're going to be considering the Village at Squaw Valley project on the, what date is that? The 15th, right? So we'll be up there for that, but then this commission will be up there on the 17th to consider the Tahoe Basin Area Plan and also the Tahoe City Lodge project. The North Star Mountain Master Plan was on that agenda. We're going to be continuing that while we get that packet in a more completeness before you guys consider it. So that'll probably be after the first of the year, so January. So that brings us up to our last meeting of the year is scheduled for December 8th. We have a number of projects lining up, and with those projects, of course, there's environmental documents that have public review periods, and we want to make sure we get, the public review periods to the end and be able to respond to comments. So what I would like to ask the commission today is to see if we can switch the December 8th regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting to December 15th. It's a week later. It's on a Thursday. And then I think that would allow us to get everything wrapped up. So we can do this. You don't have to tell me today, but we can. I can, talk to each one of you about your calendars, and then at the next meeting we'll have it on the agenda if we're going to switch it to the 15th.
It's okay with me. I can tell you now.
Okay, I got 1, 2, 3.
As long as it's not on the 25th.
Okay. All right. So we'll confirm with you, and then at our next meeting we'll have it on the agenda just to switch that to have a special meeting to wrap up for this year. And that would be in Auburn. I'm really surprised you guys didn't ask where it was going to be. But at this
Hey, wait.
point, it probably
Hey,
doesn't matter with all the
Is it
Tahoe
appropriate to
trips.
say we trust you, or?
I think you just did that, so I hear you loud and clear. So anyway, that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
What were those two projects in Tahoe next week again?
The Tahoe Basin Area Plan and the Tahoe City Lodge project.
City Lodge.
And I'd like to comment if I could on that.
Sure.
I went up on Tuesday to review the Tahoe City Lodge, and it's a tour worthwhile taking. So if you happen to be inclined to go to Tahoe between now and the 17th, it gives you a really good perspective of what they're doing there, because it's got a lot of pieces to it. So it is helpful. And I was going to say on the 16th it's supposed to be snowing up there, but on the 17th it's not. So we'll hope that's still the case.
I'll be watching the calendar.
Are we going up
for
on
the
the
weather
15th?
report.
The 17th next
yeah.
week.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
next week.
I don't want to ruin my perfect record, so. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next item is the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, and they'll be approved with one motion if someone doesn't take something off the consent. Oh, I'm sorry.
Public comment?
Public comment, I'm sorry. Public comment, man, lost track here where I was at. Time set apart at every meeting for anyone in the audience that may want to wish to address this commission on things that are not, items that are not on today's agenda. Okay, there's none, okay. Thank you, Jeff. Keeping me straight. Consent agenda, there's 2 items on the consent, and approved with one motion unless somebody takes something off, but staff has clarification on one of them there, I think on the Cisco Grove.
This is about the consent agenda?
Consent, this is consent. This is the, okay, thank you. Okay, on the conditions there. Findings, on the findings, okay. Okay. Since we've taken this off of the consent now, does anyone in the audience want to comment on this item? This item only? On the Cisco Grove extension of time? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it, and is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with those clarifications?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with the corrections as noted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, roll call, please.
Mr. Acre?
Yes.
Mr. Seveson's absent. Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Riccucci?
Yes. Okay, our first timed item, and we're past the 10:05, so we can go with okay, how do you pronounce that?
Durka.
Durka Minor Land Division, third-party appeal. So staff is making the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
The item before you is the third-party appeal of the approval of the Durka Minor Land Division. The project is located in the Forest Hill area off of Eagle Ridge Road, a developed subdivision, and it's on Canyon. The property is zoned farm with building site designation of 5 acres with a planned development of 0.2 acres. The property is developed with 2 residences. One is a single-family resident, which is located near the cul-de-sac of Eagle Ridge subdivision. The second residence is located on the northeast side of the property, and it's accessed by Ponderosa Road. It's located at an elevation of 2,340 square feet above sea level. According to the Placer County GIS maps, elevations on the parcel range from 1480 to 2340 feet above sea level. There are some steep slopes on the property. At the highest point, the single-family residence is constructed, and that again is 2,340 square feet above sea level, excuse me. And it's at the highest point of the property. The single-family residence is approximately 5,000 square feet, and the secondary residence is approximately 2,250 square feet, with 1,200 square feet of living area. The minor land division is the division of the approximately 26.6 acre parcel into two lots consisting of approximately 5 acres and approximately 21.6 acres. The property would be split between both the residences so that each parcel would result with a residence on site. On August 20th, the item was heard for the first time by the Parcel Review Committee. The Parcel Review Chairman listened to the staff, took public comment, and based on public comment and his review of the staff report and the mitigated negative declaration, determined that the item should be continued pending successful environmental review. He had determined that the mitigated neg dec did not fully describe the visual issues or fire issues and wanted staff to check up on it and make sure that it was adequate. Having done so, the mitigated negative declaration was adopted along with the approval of the minor land division on September 15th. On September 26, 2016, an appeal was filed by Mr. Garabedian on behalf of Friends of the North Fork and Placer Group Sierra Club. He cited several reasons, and I will go through each one separately. The first one is the approval of the minor land division has the potential to set a precedent for visually obtrusive residential development in high hazard areas. And staff's response is that the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the project includes an analysis of the proposed project's impacts on aesthetics and fire hazards. The analysis addressing aesthetic impacts state that to determine the severity of possible visual impacts resulting from the development of 2 additional residences, visual studies were prepared by the applicant and by Placer County Geographic Information System staffs. Based on these studies simulated the possible impacts to the aesthetically sensitive areas, it was determined that the proposed residences would cause minimal or no impacts for aesthetic purposes. In addition, the applicant identified secondary residences on the subject property, which are located on the lower side of the property, the lower elevation. Highest elevation, again, is 2,340 feet. And then the property is located at a lower location right here. In addition to that, there is another building envelope right here. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. It's really, really light. This is the second proposed secondary resident or building envelope located on the single-family residence site. And I guess I'll mention at this point that this is developed with a single-family residence, and the owner currently or any future owner has the potential or right to construct a secondary residence. It will be limited to 1,200 square feet. And we have put in these building envelopes based on that so that they will not be as visually obtrusive. The second point that Mr. Garabedian made was that the Parcel Review Committee failed to include a condition of approval that limits the further division of the resulting parcels. Generally, the county does not limit further division of the parcels. In this case, parcel 1 is 21.6 acres. That could be developed if it meets it could be developed into 4 5-acre parcels. The difficulty there, however, is that the majority of the property, and you can see it on this map here, it slopes significantly right here, and it's essentially unbuildable. There's a standard with Placer County that over 30% you cannot construct a residence, and even then it would just be too difficult. So it's unlikely that a parcel map in the future would be approved. And if there were a parcel map, again, these would be looked at. The visual studies and a mitigated negative declaration would also be completed. Issue 2 from the statement that the approval should be limited is that the 2 additional residences would exacerbate already heavy high fire hazards. And while it does have the potential to be developed with 2 additional residences, single-family residence on the second parcel and a secondary residence on the first parcel, as stated, both of these were reviewed by the Forest Hill Fire Protection District and CDF, and it was determined that with the defensible space and general inclusions in a single-family residence, such as fire sprinklers and defensible space around the residences, that it would not exacerbate fire hazards because fire could reach both the properties for the purposes of any other single-family residence. The third issue is that, sorry, I think I just clicked off. Just wanted to get it back there. So the third issue is that staff failed to identify fire personnel who reviewed the project prior to approval. Staff identified that Placer Hills Protection or Forest Hill Fire had reviewed the property and had determined that no new conditions of approval were necessary. These staff were, or the personnel that had looked at this was Ian Gao from the Forest Hill Fire District, and I had checked with him several times. In the end, he had no comments, no conditions, and issued a will serve letter. Number 4, staff did not recognize the Auburn State Recreation Area. Staff described and determined from the visual section of the mitigated negative declaration that all public areas would not be significantly impacted. This included review of the ASRA and other public properties in the area, and it was determined that it was still appropriate and the mitigated negative declaration did suffice to allow for a construction of the residence there, even near the Auburn State Recreation Area. Number 5, the misleading visual information in the Parcel Review Committee staff report is an issue. Staff did not find support of that suggestion in the appeal materials and therefore has no response. The 6th issue is that fire prevention impacts are missing from the mitigated negative declaration. In fact, the fire hazards are discussed in the mitigated negative declaration. It basically discusses that, again, regular defensible space, fire sprinklers would be enough. Again, fire had issued a will serve letter. And in addition to that, there is an easement from the existing water tank that is required so that fire can access. With that, staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission uphold the decision of the Parcel Review Committee Chairman and to take the following actions, which are to deny the third-party appeal fired by Mr. Garabedian on behalf of Friends of the North Fork and Placer Group Sierra Club, to adopt the mitigated negative declaration that's modified and the mitigation monitoring reporting program that was prepared for the project pursuant to CEQA, and uphold the Parcel Review Committee Chairman's decision to approve the Durka minor land division. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, yeah, I think you clarified one point already. On the negative declaration, it does say that this is below sea level. And you clarified that for me.
I did, yeah.
Okay. Just thought I'd bring that up. I
Thank
read
you.
that, I thought 1,480 and 2,340 below sea level. I thought,
No, oh, did it
problem
say
here.
below? Oh, did I say that? I am so sorry.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I
okay,
meant,
no problem.
I thought you meant that the secondary residence building envelope was below the
Oh, the whole
higher
project's
residence.
below sea level. Sorry.
Then we're all in trouble.
Could you go back to the map of the
Yes.
parcel, please? Okay, there's a subdivision that, I mean, they're dividing the boundary into a 5-acre parcel and a 21-acre parcel, that's correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you pointed out building envelopes on the 21-acre parcel, 2 building envelopes?
That's correct.
And so there'll be 3 houses on that parcel?
No, it's identified as 2, and it would be one of the 2. So it would be on the information page of the minor land division or the parcel map once it's recorded. So once another person comes in and wants to construct on the property, they're limited to one of the 2 building envelopes, and that will be clarified on the information page.
And so then at that time, they'll establish new 5-acre parcel somewhere on the property, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm wondering how you have, well, yeah, maybe another question first. They could have 2 houses on a parcel? Could
That's
you explain that to me, please, what the purpose of that is, or what it,
okay.
yeah.
Each parcel, each residential parcel can contain both a single-family residence and a secondary residence. The size of the secondary residence is limited to a maximum of 1,200 square feet. However, there are lower limitations, less square feet for parcels that are smaller. So 5 acres, however, is at the maximum, so it's 1,200 square feet. Both of these properties, what will happen here is there will be a division of the property. The 5-acre parcel has the secondary residence on it right now. Once it's split, that will be the single-family residence on the property because it stands alone. Once they want to come in, and what will happen is that then transfers into a secondary residence upon the owner wanting to come in and build a single-family residence on that property.
And this is a 5-acre parcel?
This is a 5-acre parcel. So it's a little bit backwards to what usually occurs. And then on the first parcel, the 21.6-acre parcel, there is a single-family residence already, and it has to remain that way because of the size. And then in those building envelopes, in one of the 2 building envelopes, the owner of the property can construct a 1,200 square foot residence, but it's 1,200 square feet of living space. So they can have additional space for the purposes of accessory use, including a garage.
Okay. And so is there a building envelope on the 5-acre parcel?
No.
So,
The reason for that is that the property in that area is really a lot less visible. And it would be difficult at this time to identify a building envelope on that site, in part because it is very steep. So it might be difficult to even build another secondary residence.
but it's got an existing 1,200 square foot building on it already?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions?
You did say that the current residences are basically on the 2 high points of the property now?
The single-family residence is on the high point. The building envelopes are at a lower point.
The potential secondary residence,
That's correct.
and we don't at this point have any, is it a given that they're going to build that secondary residence?
No,
Or just
sorry.
planning for potential?
It's for potential, and the applicant has stated, the owner of the property has stated that he has no plans to develop a secondary residence at any time in the near future.
All right, thank you.
On those building pads, or do we Do we actually, is this the first time that we've conditioned the parcel map on with these two areas, or do we do this in other areas in the county that you know of anyway?
It's rare. We used to do it, but it doesn't always work out that well. In this case, because it's a parcel map, it's going to be a lot easier, and based on the visual sensitivities, it makes sense to have that on the information page. But normally, we don't have recorded building envelopes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask the appellant to come up and present his material. And
Hello, Mike Arabedian, representing Sierra Club and Friends of the North Fork. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to address some questions about the staff report. And the number one question is that I believe this is not the approved parcel map that we are appealing. The approved parcel map we're appealing does have the two building envelopes on it. So I don't know if there's a slide of the actually approved parcel map or not.
Can I speak to that? That is the approved parcel map, but it is really difficult to see the envelopes on there. I can point them out if you like.
Okay.
the building pad, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can see them, but just barely. The line is really light.
Yeah, very light. In the right-hand corner up above.
It's up there.
Very light.
They're easier to see in attachment E
Yeah.
in your packet.
It is.
Yeah, the packet does have the actual map, and I don't believe that is the actual
But you can
map.
see the lines up there. They're just very light up in that right-hand corner.
Going from where to where?
Where it says Ponderosa Way, and you see that at the bottom, that's kind of the bottom end of the envelope, and then it kind of goes up to the top of the end of the property line up there.
Yeah, it's right there.
Well, go ahead, continue.
Well, I can see them on this attachment.
We have it in our staff report. I mean, if it isn't the same one, we got in our staff report, so we just continue.
Yeah, it starts there and goes up to the property line, very close.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you. Oops. So we basically feel that this is not finished, that you don't have the information you need to make a decision. And I'll go into that in some detail here. And ultimately, we'll recommend that you either send it back to parcel review or take up the issues here and put it over for you to address as you would choose, or best of all, deny the division. The staff refers to the mitigated neg deck, but the issues we are concerned about really aren't addressed in the neg deck, and I'll explain. There are many issues that just aren't covered there that need to be. So first, let's look at the something that's not in there. There just isn't any description of what's in the Forest Hill Divide Community Plan, what the policies are, nor the general plan that affect visual issues. This map is the map that was prepared as the Forest Hill Divide Community Plan was being developed, and it shows the view shed that has special protection policies in the Forest Hill Divide Community Plan. And I'd be happy to pass this around for you to look at. If you want to, you can see Ponderosa Way and where this point is.
I guess so.
So this line is from the center line of the river. That's how this was made by the county. That map was made.
And let me ask you a question on that, because the way you stated it was as it was being developed.
Right.
Is that a map that became part of the final document?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We were involved in working on that issue, and Friends of the North Fork was, and agreed that the center line of the river was the appropriate place for which to have a view shed. Now, this map, the red line on this map is the ridge line. That and this map also shows all of the existing parcels up there.
We aren't interested in all the existing parcels. We're interested in these 2 parcels.
Right. And so you can see the exact location of this parcel in relation to the neighboring parcels and so forth. That's the point about that
Okay.
particular point.
Which way to go?
And this is a viewshed map also made during the process of the Forest Divide Community Plan. And what it shows are these kind of grayish brown parcels on here. These are parcels that the county identified as parcel requests. So the county had contact about these parcels being divided as parcelization. And that's of course a major issue here, because if you approve this, if it's approved, it becomes the first land division on the 5-mile stretch of the Forest Hill Divide Community Plan from the Long Point Fuel Break to Shirt Tail Canyon, basically. And these parcels have been in various state of proposals, starting with the Bell-Cara proposal, the first one, and then ending up with the Goody parcel, the Hackett Trust in here, the dry stack that's now now called the Butler Woods, where there was a pre-development meeting on that.
Did you present these maps to the staff after they went back a second time and looked at it? Or is this all new information?
Some of these maps were presented to the Parcel Review Committee chair. That's what we presented them as. And I can't recall exactly which ones were presented and not.
Okay, thank you.
So the
So that's the view shed comments. You have any other comments on the other 4 or 5 items, or?
no, I haven't commented on the view shed items. I'm going to start on the fire issues.
Oh, fire issue, okay.
So, and we've addressed the cumulative impact issue in our appeal document and as a CEQA issue, and I hadn't planned to go into that today except to indicate quite visually and clearly the potential for development along the rim. That we have advocated and advocate here that there needs to be an EIR done, some kind of study done on that 5-mile rim to deal with visual problems in these, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The Forest Hill Divide Community Plan actually provided for design guidelines to be developed to address these various issues that you're talking about here, and the traffic staff is trying to deal with in this proposal, but the design guidelines have not come about yet.
Michael, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because these are existing structures now, and staff has told us that as regards to the 21 acres, that there's some real topography issues there that are going to limit any further development on that parcel, and that the other one, it doesn't sound like they're going to develop the 5 acres at this point. So they're existing structures, so we're not talking about anything new, so I'm sorry, I still want to kind of focus in on where your concern is, because they're already there.
Well, our concern is about this proposal, the proposal to divide this into 2 parcels.
Right.
First of all, the 5-acre parcel, which does not have a building, I understand, does not have a building envelope identified on it. About the only place for it would be to the west of the existing house. And that is, starts steeply going downhill.
Right. And
the staff didn't. I know the staff has some other slides we can look at to get into that when we get into the viewshed issue. But the secondary homes are as of right. It doesn't matter what the current home owner wants to do or not do. Another one can come in and do it as a ministerial matter. So As you may have seen I don't know if you've seen them, but there have been a couple variance requests for secondary homes, even on 3-acre parcels. So the time to limit the division is now. That's our point of view, to not allow further division. And best of all, to stop the possibility, especially for the fire hazard reasons, but also the visual, to deny the division itself and not create the possibility of new secondary homes, because the staff is kind of relying on future divisions to a limit or not, and really there's no better example we know of than for you to exercise your discretion now and to say, this is the time where we think we should.
Yeah, but we're not discussing future division of the larger parcel. We're just discussing the 2 parcels up there. The future division, if any, should come before us, would come back to this commission with additional analysis and everything else. So I think we need to say not just about what can happen in the future, but about what we're talking about here. And I think I'd like to have you just address.
Well, could I answer that question?
Well, no, first let me finish. I think, we adopted, or staff is recommending that we adopt this negative, modified mitigated negative declaration. And I want you to tell me why, and tell this commission why you think it's inadequate. Staff has responded to your appeal, and tell us what you disagree with by a couple of items, or else we're going to be here all day, and I'm not going to be here all day. I can tell you that.
Are you putting a time limit on this, sir?
Sure. We put a time limit on everything. I didn't say anything at the beginning, but our staff spent 10 to 15 minutes, and normally I say 10 or 15 minutes. I'll give you a little more time today.
That's totally inadequate. You can't hear the issues. You just asked, well, you would like to know the reasons that the MND is inadequate. That alone could take 10 or 15 minutes.
I want to know why you think the staff's analysis of that and making that recommendation is inadequate.
Yes, I am prepared.
I don't want to go by every part of it.
It deals.
Continue, but we do have a time limit on every item that comes here. So continue.
Okay.
But we can't, let me say one more thing. We can't be going back and forth from the view shed to the fire to the EIR. You had specific, and staff answered on their secondary analysis, those specific questions. Unless you're going to bring up some new stuff, those are the ones that we need to concentrate on, I believe.
This hasn't been before you, sir. You don't know these issues. I'm prepared to address those 2 issues. I've told you we're not going to address cumulative impacts and a number of other issues. We're focusing on these 2.
Focus on them then.
Okay. Well, you brought up another question. We couldn't disagree with you more to say that future land division is not an issue here. You have the ability under the subdivision map app to put on this map and say no further land division. This is the time we think you should be making that decision. So for you to tell me I can't talk about that is something that you're telling me I shouldn't try to get you to comply with something you could do discretionarily in the subdivision map.
I have a question on that, if I could. What you just said, because basically this parcel is zoned, and we're hearing that it's zoned for, 4.9 or 5 acre minimums. And so in order to put more restrictions on it, then it would have to go back as a zoning request to change it from what it's zoned right now, right?
No, I don't agree with that at all. That might happen.
Sure, go ahead.
They would take that discretionary action.
Okay, and that would be consistent with the zoning.
It would be consistent, if they would need to divide the property consistent with that 5 acre minimum zoning, which is proposed here.
For us really to take action on what he's recommending would be a zoning change, which isn't in our authority.
That's
today.
false.
I think if I understand, what Mr. Garabedian's concern is that they, as a property owner, they would have the right to come in and request a lot split, but that requires a approval by the Parcel Review Committee.
Right.
So if we were to put a note on a map to prevent any further subdivision, that's a right of a property owner. We typically haven't done that, but that's something that
Well,
he's
it's
asking.
beyond our consideration today.
Well,
I
we think
could
it.
do I think we could do it as part of a condition of approval.
Exactly.
That being said, to condition something beyond what it's currently zoned for, more restrictive, I don't necessarily would think would be appropriate for us to do.
Or even permissible, I don't know.
Certainly, it's permissible. Absolutely, you have they're pointing out it is not the county's practice to condition land divisions on no further division. That's their practice, and we're suggesting you should do something different in this case because of the fire issues I haven't even begun to discuss.
Well, if the landowner has a right to request further parcelization, then that is beyond our consideration today, is the way I'm reading it.
Aaron?
You may not want to do it. You may not want to exercise your
that's not what I'm
discretion.
saying.
Mr. Garabine, our attorney, would like to say something at the present time.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, what you have before you here is an appeal of a minor land division.
Right.
That is all you have in front of you, including an appeal of the CEQA analysis of the same. If as EJ has mentioned, if the property owner wishes to split his property, and if the zoning permits that split, then he can apply for that. And at that time, it will be reviewed by staff. It will be subject to CEQA review, and it will be subject to consideration by the Parcel Review Committee. For you to impose a condition, you would have to find a nexus. I fail to understand where the nexus is to impose a condition to restrict future land divisions based on this item in front of you. Moreover, it does impose something that restricts future property rights that are subject to a separate proceeding. Therefore, I do not recommend you do it. And I disagree that somehow the Subdivision Map Act allows you to do something that is not based on a nexus connection, and that being nexus meaning that there is a connection between the perceived impact and the condition. And here we have a speculation that the property owner will come in for a future land division. That's not here. There's no evidence of that. Therefore, I'm not sure how you make a nexus finding to suddenly restrict something for the future on this current land division.
Well, the point is you have the authority to do that if there is a nexus, and I will get a chance to talk about the nexus, I hope.
You can say that, but let's move on.
Go ahead. Go ahead with your next point.
Thank you. So, what didn't happen talking about fire now, what didn't happen at the Parcel Review Committee and isn't happening here is that Chief Gao and Captain DiMaggio were not there to explain why their questions about fire prevention and fire issues that affect this subdivision, and I will get into a list of those. We think that just like you have public works or environmental sanitation and so forth, you should be getting reports from the chief, if he maybe doesn't want to come in, but certainly from Captain DiMaggio, who works here and has the CAL FIRE responsibility for fire prevention here, both under the county's contract with him and under the responsibility that he has for CAL FIRE. Now, there's no I have a question for staff. She mentioned that Chief Gao didn't have anything further to do except a couple points. She did not mention what Captain DiMaggio had to say or if he submitted anything in writing, and I'm not aware that he did.
Well, they got a well-served letter, evidently, so.
That's not from the CAL FIRE. That's from the Forest Hill Fire Protection District.
Okay.
Sarah Gilmore, Engineering and
Go ahead.
Surveying. Yeah, we did not receive any written comment despite numerous contacts with CAL FIRE. If my recollection is correct, we talked to them verbally a number of times and they declined to comment, deferring instead to the local fire chief that he had covered all the questions. We have a response, a will-serve type response from Gary Kirk during the environmental review, and then a further will-serve letter which is contained in your staff report from Ian Gao, the current fire chief. We always contact them. They have the opportunity to.
they're the serving agency?
They're the serving agency. There is a wildfire responsibility for CAL FIRE to serve, but they were circulated and had every opportunity
Yeah,
to.
they're the lead agency.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Go ahead,
you're
Mr.
talking about fire protection, or in other words, fire control, and there's a case of a fire. What we're talking about, and bringing up to you, perhaps for the first time, I'm not sure, fire prevention in terms of a land division and where to locate structures on that. This has to do with land structures and land division and fire prevention, and that is what CAL FIRE's job is.
Okay, so
For
we got
this.
the answer. Go ahead with the next point.
They are identified as land use planning. That's part of their function under the county's contract.
Okay,
with
well,
them.
we've heard the staff's response on that one, so go ahead.
I mean, a will serve letter is different than fire prevention.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about here. So the fire prevention for land division is at least three things, and it is your public safety first of all. You have responsibility. Your authority, your discretion is to protect the public health and safety. That's the first thing. Second, there is the environmental hazard issue and public health issues that might be affected that are dealt with inadequately, but to some extent, very superficially, in the mitigated neg deck. What they do is they treat the future houses that might be built here as if they were already there, and that is the concern, the staff isn't recommending that you use your ability and authority to say, there are fire hazards here that we should address right now with this land division. So there's public safety, there's environmental issues, and finally, quite critical, there are issues along this rim of economic, the county's economic, the area's economic, and recreational, the natural resources economy, the recreational use of the area that would be affected by both fires that could occur and recreation. Now, my experience here is that I have a Bachelor of Science in Forestry. I took a fire class as part of that. I fought on some Forest Service fires on the Modoc and elsewhere, and then also as a volunteer fireman in upstate New York and had some structure and trailer fire experience. I took the 2-day structure ignition certification course about 3 years ago at the annual WUI conference. I think I've made the point that we think you should be exercising your discretion to do what's more than the normal procedure where things are left to some future conditions to try to decide whether or not it should be division. But there is no fire prevention analysis in the neg deck or in the staff's work. Just nothing, and I'll go into that. There's no structure ignition analysis. There's no fire traffic in terms and safety issues in terms of a Ponderosa Way or fire evacuation or the impact of further division and further development on fire prevention here. So here's the specifics. Here's the nexus that if the staff doesn't develop the nexus, you will be able to say, well, we don't know what the nexus is because they didn't tell us. Because they aren't putting it in the neg deck. They aren't bringing these fire prevention issues. Mr. DiMaggio isn't doing it either. And about 2 years ago, I asked the other captain there, I said, and he explained to me something that was in grievous error. He said that CAL FIRE does not get involved in proposed developments on the Forest Hill Divide if there's a fire district there, fire marshal. Well, that was an error. That's been corrected, not because of anything I did.
You can't do anything about that.
So first of all, there's no attention to slope here in terms of its impact on fire and impact of locating future structures, secondary homes, or providing another lot where there would be homes on this area. There's no consideration of fire behavior and what happens when a fire comes up a ridge to these areas, the slope of that and the fire behavior with wind driven or not, or what happens when the fire gets to the top of a hill and rolls over a structure. The structure, now the MND does say that this is a heavily vegetated area, but it doesn't go to the next step in terms of fire prevention. It doesn't tell you what's going on in the divide right now in terms of creating fuel breaks or fire-safe communities and so forth. There's every reason that should be in here, and we should know if there are fuel breaks and plans being done right now that affect this development, affect your decision about whether or not to allow. If you approve this, you allow two further, and as council explained last time, if you allow two further divisions, then if you allow this division, then it might be divided again with this kind of snowballing. This is the time to deal with these possible future secondary home possibilities. There's no attention, the staff doesn't show where other houses are, and we'll get into this in a minute, and subdivisions not identified and whether they have fire safe protection and so forth. There is no discussion of fire breaks or other fire prevention activities on Eagle Ridge, whether they exist or not, or that community is a fire safe community or not. Now, one of the most important things, there's no discussion of setbacks. The houses have been located for visual impact issues, or the building envelopes. They are not located for fire impact issues, such as the impact on the road or their relation to the slope and fire behavior. They're just not there. And there's no description of the past fires that have been in this area, showing fire perimeters that have burned on the divide and in the area of divide. The Trailhead Fire, American River Complex, Ponderosa Fire, the Stevens Fire. There have been a number of fires there, and most notably, the King Fire 2 years ago was a wake-up call. It should have been a wake-up call. The King Fire, the day it jumped as much as 17 miles in one day, that next day, then other communities it could affect, and there were meetings in these communities. A Forest Hill Divide was the meeting I went to after that jump, but they were in Tahoe City and in Squaw Valley. It threatened a number of communities, and this is the time to note that we have problems. We have conflagration issues in these areas from vegetation, dying trees, and so forth.
Michael, can I just jump in here again? Because I'm still having a little trouble tracking with you on this, because we're talking about existing structures, and what you're kind of implying is, to me, is by comparison of boxing at shadows, because we're talking about the potential that they may have down the road. They have no intentions now. We have nothing to consider in front of us other than the lot split where there are existing structures. So whenever they would come in and ask to be able to use that right, obviously the county staff is going to be evaluating that, and part of that would be the risk that some of the things that you're bringing up now. But right now, that's not a part of it's in our consideration at all. So I'm having trouble connecting with you on this.
No, you don't want to exercise your discretion that you have, and that's your decision. But we obviously disagree with that, because the secondary homes do not have staff analysis. They are basically ministerial.
I'm gonna horn in here, and I'm going to ask our attorney. I'm going to request that we give Mr. Garabedian another 15 minutes on this. Because he's already more than double what staff's presentation.
But
we have most of the material.
You've been asking questions.
And I'm going, well, okay, then I'm going to ask this county's attorney if that's permissible for me to limit it to 15 more minutes.
Of course it's permissible, but I don't think you should do it.
Well, I didn't ask you the question. I'm asking our attorney.
Well,
because I don't want to get in trouble.
Well, you're in trouble because
you're already in trouble with you, but that's all right. Go ahead, Aaron.
Under the Brown Act, you may limit testimony. I'd encourage you to encourage Mr. Garabedian to go through his points of his appeal so that you can hear the entire scope of his appeal, so that you can render a decision on all those items. But to the extent that you believe it is appropriate at this point to limit what the time frame would be for Mr. Garabedian to present his appeal items, that is within your authority to do.
Well, I'd
encourage you to keep it reasonable.
Okay. I'd like to have Mr. Garabedian keep it reasonable and stay on the items of the appeal and responses to what the staff has recommended then.
One thing that would be helpful is to go back to the slide that lists the points in the appeal. So it helps to facilitate the discussion.
I'm sorry, are we limiting the time?
No, we're going to continue, but we want to stay on these points here, as recommended by Richard here.
Well, we're still on fire, and you have before you a copy of the map as approved.
Could you possibly give us the Reader's Digest version on each one of these, or we could be here all day?
We won't be here all day, sir.
Please.
You keep asking questions, and that's what's taking up the majority of the time, and that's fine. I don't mind answering them, but you're limiting my time because you're answering questions doesn't
We
give me
won't
a
ask
time.
any- we
The
won't
council
ask any-
suggested I make my presentation and go through it. That's a good
We
idea.
won't ask any more questions, and you don't ask any more questions of staff, then just make the presentation as you see fit then. Okay?
That's your decision.
To
I
the
will.
point. And
I have to abide by
Let's
it.
stay on the point.
So let's take a look at this map here. You can see in the upper right-hand corner the building envelope. There are some dark lines on here that I have drawn. I didn't intend it, but the big line is the Ponderosa Way road, and then along the building envelopes there are some darkened areas. I would say the major concern about either of these locations is that they are downhill from other structures. They provide a potential ignition source for other structures if they're burning. The structure above the road, it looks like it's about 70 feet from the house, and it's uphill. There's all of the science shows that if structures are within 30 feet of each other, they ignite each other. And in a situation like this where there's uphill, there's a definite potential problem with that suggests there's a reason for you to act here to protect the public safety and welfare. Now, the nearness of these to the hairpin turn on Ponderosa Way suggests really real problems. If one of these houses are built there, could affect evacuation and so forth. These are not good locations if you consider the fire prevention aspect. Maybe I should get into the visual issues. This is a critical issue, a major issue, and a regret that you don't want to spend all of the necessary time on it. So let's look at the fire issues. The general plan has ridge top issues and visibility and aesthetic issues in it. I've shown you the ridgeline map. So this is definitely a ridgeline issue where these houses have potential ridgelines. The map that I passed around shows the public lands across the river that are all within view of this site, and review of the whole rim, for which this would be the first development to allow houses view from throughout the canyon. I've shown you the Forest Divide viewshed map that has limitations on what should be done. It's clear in those policies that that should be addressed. This policy should be addressed and discussed in this, and they aren't. The recreational issue is critical. The fact that the negative deck does not even mention in it the Auburn State Recreation Area and the recreation impacts of building on the canyon rim and the cumulative impacts is a serious deficiency that should be addressed. If you send this on to the board, they will not have the information they need. They will not have the information that needs to be developed to develop the common sense, practical issues of trying to address fire safety from this land division. It's a bit of a dilemma because the issues that we have that suggest it's time for the county, in this case to say, and in the case of this ridge, to say that we have the general plan protections, we have the Forest Hill Divide community plan protections. It's time for us to say we want to address these concerns in this development, address these visual impacts and the severe fire impacts. That, to me, it would not be responsible for you to get informed, have the report here from Mr. DiMaggio, have him present to answer and address these questions, get a written report if he chose to do it. Fire prevention is not on your agenda on this, and it apparently is not on anybody's agenda here. Fire prevention, in other words, designing, locating, approving development in a manner that protects the people that would live in these houses and the community from fires, and also doesn't create hazardous fire conditions that might be very difficult or impossible to control because they're on a steep slope for when there is a fire, and might even endanger the access on Ponderosa Way, which is a potential escape route, with that sharp curve right there. As someone who has worked on ignition and fire issues, it seems to me that without having that input and getting those answers, and this is not only a problem here, but the problem of not having not having had anything from the Forest Hill Fire Protection District to deal with how to manage this in terms of fuel breaks or controls, not preventing future, allowing future with a mere variance in some cases, in some of these locations, allowing people to have secondary homes built on their property. This is the time you should be thinking about that, and you should be getting input from your fire prevention expert, Mr. DiMaggio. You should be saying, have him come in and report to us next time, or send it back to the Parcel Review Committee to get this kind of input. You just don't have it. You don't have what you need, the basis you need to make this really important decision. This is not like the rest of the county. It's a steep area. It's an extreme fire hazard area. The building code is not enough in an area like this. You can't rely on future zoning. You can't rely on future regulation. The time to do this is now. The problem you are creating. You create this problem if you deny this appeal and don't do anything to address this parcel.
Okay, and did we finish addressing all 5 or 6 issues up there? Because that was the portions of your appeal. And staff has addressed them in our about 3 pages here, 4 pages, additional pages.
Those pages are addressed based on the negative deck that does not give you the information. And it's not only the neg deck. We're not just talking about CEQA. We're talking about your discretion to protect the public health and safety, and you're having enough information to know how to do that with fire prevention principles that are not applied at all in this document, in neg deck, and so forth. It is really a serious problem for the public that you will not, if you don't consider. It's really time now to say, okay, we'd like to get fire prevention information and know what the, I don't know that any of you are experts on this. Maybe you are on this, but this is the time to say, we need more information before we act on this.
Okay, thank you. That it? Okay.
Well, and finally, on the property rights issue, this action will create more property rights. You're talking about existing property rights. You're saying the zoning gives them, well, by this division, you give them more property rights at the expense of public safety. That should be your concern.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call upon staff if they have any additional, just a follow-up, and then we'll have the applicant come up. Does staff have any comment at this time? Anybody on staff?
No.
Okay, then the
We'll
applicant.
have some questions for him later.
Oh, yeah, we'll have questions for you later. So, okay, the applicant, please identify yourself.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robert Durka. I'm the owner of the property there.
Sorry for mispronouncing or couldn't pronounce your name.
I can't pronounce it very well
wasn't
myself,
that long
actually.
compared to mine, but it just kind of threw me when I saw it.
I was born with it, so.
Okay.
Anyhow, I'm the owner of the property at 19710 Eagle Ridge Road. I purchased this property in 2004. I've had it for 12 years. It's my home. It's the home that I plan on living in for the rest of my life and retiring to. I'm also very concerned, as well as the applicant here, or the appellant here, in terms of fire safety. And in fact, this particular property actually tends to be a staging area where CAL FIRE and both the local fire agencies come to whenever there's a fire event that occurs in the Forest Hill area. They oftentimes will gather on the property, they will go and then decide what actions they're going to take on different fires that are occurring there. And what that's allowed me to do is to get to know some of these gentlemen, not terribly well, but get to know them and ask them for advice as to what we should be doing as a neighborhood in my particular parcel to go and mitigate any sort of fire risk. And they have given me different recommendations, which we've gone and done over a period of years. One in particular is, if we can bring the map back up, They're to the left of the home there. They call it a bowl, actually, which they says is a chimney, actually, for fire. So this section, right down in here, they call it a bowl. And they recommended that I go and remove all of the brush and the ladder fuels down in that area and leave the trees. And I've done so. I've gone down the hillside quite a distance in that direction to go and remove some of the flammable materials there. Also have done so regarding the granny cottage as well. So with those gentlemen, I'm working with them quite often actually to figure out other ways to go and create additional fire safety. Also, not even requested by them, but I was also concerned that when I moved to the area that the Ponderosa access road here that goes down the river, that's not a public, it's not maintained by the county or by anybody. And I was very disturbed that there was brush and debris all over the road, and it was very much a fire hazard. So at my own expense and with other individuals, in fact, I have poison oak in my eye right now from this past weekend working on the property. We've gone and cleaned up that entire road by removing all the dry brush, by getting rid of all the dead brush, and also limbing up some of the trees so there's not any way for a ladder fire to occur. So I also am very concerned. We've also addressed access a bit, meaning that even though Ponderosa Road would be the main means of access to that site, internally we've created a trail that's about 8 feet wide. So there's another way to go and get out if there were to be a fire that were to start down at Ponderosa for the granny cottage, just in case something were to occur. And all the neighbors in that area were very, very conscious of fire. We all get along quite well. We all talk about different ways to go and mitigate this, and we're very, very focused on it. My intentions here is to be here for the rest of my life. I don't have any intentions to go and build a granny cottage, but you never know what life will bring upon you. I might have a family member. I may need to have a granny cottage for maybe somebody to take care of me as I age. I don't know, but I've already been here for 12 years, and I have no intention to do so at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any comments of Mr. The applicant? No, we've closed, Mr. Garabini, and we gave you more than enough time, so.
Well,
It's our time to ask staff and the additional questions.
well, I would like to respond to
Well, you don't know. That's not part of the process right now. We'll have staff to respond to what
Okay,
you just
well, I hope
said.
I would, as the appellant, I hope we brought this issue, you went first. We
Okay,
would like to
there'll be
respond.
one more comment afterward, but staff can make a comment on, or ask the applicant any questions, or do we have questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead,
Of
Richard.
staff. And so, when we're looking at the large parcel, what I'm hearing is there's a possibility of building a 1,200 square foot home.
That's correct.
Just one.
Second.
Okay.
Correct.
And on the small parcel, the 5-acre parcel, there's a possibility of building a larger home.
That's correct.
And so on the 5-acre parcel, if the applicant or the person that owns this property decides to build that larger home, what is a process that they'd have to go through in order to build that home?
They would go through our building permit process, and at that point it would be reviewed. For fire purposes, it would be reviewed, and building requires certain improvements by fire that they'll have to do in order to get the building permit.
Okay, so it'll be a quite complete analysis, is what you're saying at that time?
Yes.
For the building department?
Yes, but Sarah would like to speak to it.
Just real quick, in addition, every building permit would require a fire department sign-off as well, so the fire department would have an additional opportunity to comment and have any requirements on that building.
Okay, good. Well, that answers that question. And I guess there's room on that parcel to build another house, and so I'm assuming that's the case. So at any rate, also when I read the negative declaration, it does address fire.
That's correct.
And what it's basically referring to is the state of California has some fairly rigid requirements now, particularly in this zone, for maintenance of the vegetation around houses a certain distance from fire, for fire prevention. And I think what I'm reading here is this document does include those requirements.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? No? Okay. I don't know, is this an appropriate time now to,
Pursuant to our usual procedure, it would be appropriate to allow the appellant rebuttal rights to anything that's been stated so far.
I'm looking for the clicker.
She's got it. That's why you couldn't find it.
The county has mapped in detail the visibility of the area.
Could you-
This shows the end of
Could you speak
Eagle
into
Ridge
the-
Road and the parcel in question, and you can see I guess there's something here. You can see the house where Mr. Durka lives and the secondary home that's there. Right now.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Garabini, you need to be closer to the microphone so we can record your voice.
Thank you. The first one showed the Durka house at the end of the road. Oops.
Wrong way.
Here, and the secondary home that's here right now. I don't know who lives there now, or if it's just used. And this is Ponderosa Way, and here's the difficult turn and the North Fork American River. Now these next two slides, and I'll come back. These are the two other slides I wanted to show. They show this oblique view of the secondary home and this home. Now, of course, the property does extend throughout this area, but as you can see, the potential of a fire sweeping up this ridge is not going to be addressed just by what the property owner does on their property. Here again is the primary home here and secondary home here, and so this is a very thickly vegetated, a highly dangerous area, as the community wildlife, the CWPP, the Community Wildland Protection Plan for this area, identifies recreation sources of fire burning up to this area. And so fire prevention is different than fire control and fire protection. Fire prevention is what is not addressed at all in any way, shape, or form in the NEG deck, in terms of the issues I've talked about, fire behavior, and what this means is in terms of a danger to this community, what's being done. So it's just this slide alone, I think, suggests the serious potential fire danger to this property, and the reason that you should get that fire prevention information before you and know what fire ignition issues are and fire prevention, and get advice on what should be done in this property if it can be protected. I mean, maybe there is a way to protect it in a way, or maybe the buildings can be located in such a way. I mean, right now, houses, one of the common things that's proposed in fire prevention is to have a setback from the ridge, when fires come up. There is no setback at all for this parcel, and the ones that are located, the two potential locations, and the potential location out here for a second home, should somebody in the future or things change for Mr. Durka, are a travesty that you should have the facts about, and not be going by what you know with the information that deals with houses as if they're already there. There's the CAL FIRE is supposed to review these because they are the trustee of our wildlands and forest lands. They have a responsibility to the people of the state as well as their contractual responsibilities to the county, and they have not exercised those here, and you should be asking for them. And so that's our key point.
Okay, thank you. I don't think it's necessary.
Bring it back to the commission.
Yeah, I think I'll bring it back to the commission at this time and ask commission members what they feel on the adequacy of the staff's follow-up recommendation.
Mr. Chairman?
Jeffrey.
I am by no means an expert in firefighting or fire prevention, but I do have better than 20 years in on a fire truck. I've been up in the Forest Hill Divide fighting several of them over the years. But what I see here is two homes on one parcel that will soon be two homes on two parcels if the applicant gets his way. And with regards to prevention or firefighting or evacuation, it changes nothing. I'm also familiar with the administration of both CAL FIRE and at Forest Hill Fire. And at that level, they're not bashful people. If they have something to say, if they have input to put on a project that's before them, believe me, you will hear from them if there are concerns. It's not that they're worried about offending. It's not that they don't care. It's when they see something like this and it changes nothing for them, they're not going to have a whole lot to comment about. You know, you can what if it and future look at it to death, but that's not what's before us right now. We have a piece of property that has 2 homes on it, and the applicant would like it to be 2 pieces of property with 2 homes. That's it. Nothing else changes. At some point, it may, but, you know, we're not asked to address that today. And I think the lack of response from the fire department is more indicative of their comfort with the application than it is with lack of concern.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other comments from the staff members? I mean, from commission members? If not,
Well, you know, I second that. You look at that map, and those houses are in jeopardy, and you know, the owner knows it, and the owner's taking actions to minimize the jeopardy. But when you look at all that brushy slope down below, a fire is going to go there, and that'll just be the consequence of the fire. And I think you're close enough to the main road that you have time to get out. And so, you know, basically, you know, fire prevention, I don't know what you do on that steep slope as far as keeping the fire other than what you've already done to reduce the understory vegetation on the steep slope below you. So, you know, I don't think there's an option unless, you know, the state parks wants to clear that hillside off, then there's not an option. So at any rate, and I agree that there's 2 homes there now and 2 parcels, and, you know, that's what the property owner's going to deal with, and you'll deal with the insurance company too and everybody else. But
If you can find insurance.
yeah. But you already have it, I hope. So, so at any rate, I just don't see where sending this back to the fire department is going to help answer any questions here either.
okay, thank you, Richard. Go ahead.
Anything else, I'm glad to make a motion.
Go ahead. I don't think there's any more comments. No comments? Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the third-party appeal and adopt the negative, let me get over here, negative declaration and mitigated monitoring and reporting program that have been prepared for the project pursuant to CEQA. Uphold the Parcel Review Committee Chairman's decision to approve the
Findings.
land division to allow the subdivision of approximately 26.61 acre property into 2 parcels consisting of 5 acres and 21.6 acres, subject to the findings and conditions of approval.
Subject to the CEQA findings and the parcel map finding and the,
Second?
Right.
it's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. Seveson's absent. Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Rakucci?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Appeal is denied. Any other business or, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, could you read in the appeal rights into the record, please?
Oh, yeah, this can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors for $564. Thank you. Any other further business before the commission today? Okay, seeing none, the meeting's adjourned.